My question is, I've been doing this Krishna Upasana where I do like chanting for 35 to 40 minutes. But lately, but my old habits, they don't go. So I came across something called as Bhairav Upasana, where Kal Bhairav, I was told that he is one deity who is very closer to our realms, and he can, if you do his upasana, he guides you and uh, helps you. So you have any can you tell me something about it? Is it, should I do that, or I should continue with my Krishna upasana?
To your question, I don't have experience with that upasana that you are describing. So I cannot tell you from my own experience. But what I can tell you is it now simply a calculation in your mind that maybe you are getting more effect if you do that? Or is it really coming from your heart? Look, have a good, honest look at yourself. And then you can do what you feel is right for you. And if you feel to continue with your Krishna Upasana, then by all means continue that Krishna Upasana and not think because you have heard and read that the other is more efficient for certain things that you should change to that. If your heart tells you, yes, it's time to do so, to do that change, or to do both, I don't know, fine. But if it's simply a calculation, then there is something missing, and I think you are better informed to continue to do that upasana that comes from your heart.
Right.
Right.
I'll do that. Thank you. Hari Om.
Hari Om. And let me say something more to what we just discussed with Vikas. When we are doing spiritual practices, especially when we're starting something, often there is the feeling, oh, yes, there is something there. There is a good effect. Because grosser aspects immediately get affected and we can feel, right, there is something very good going on. But then when we proceed, sometimes, most of the time, for practitioners, that feeling starts to disappear. We practice, and somehow it feels, doesn't really have much effect. And then we always can read and hear from all directions wonderful things, wonderful practices, and people are gushing with telling us how much effect they are experiencing. And then one is always tempted, maybe I should do something else. It would maybe have a better effect. But if we do that something else, with the first enthusiasm, it may feel again, oh my God, yes, something is happening, something is really going on. But if we go on with that same practice, the same thing will happen again. That somehow the feeling comes in. I keep on practicing, keep on doing, and not much is happening, but actually still something is happening. So we have to learn to be very careful and really have a good look at ourselves. Does it really come from deep down when we want to change our practice? Does it really come from my heart? Do I feel in my heart, yes, this is the right thing to do? Or is it simply because we are getting convinced in our mind, maybe we could be more successful and more efficient and somehow squeeze something more out of it if we change? it's not meant that if we have chosen something that we need to continue with that same thing for the rest of our life. But basically, it's good to have a basic direction and build up on that. And then if a new aspect comes in, we can consider it, we can check it, and maybe we can integrate it in our practice that we are already doing. Or nothing simply because it's said somewhere, written somewhere, some other people talk like this, that something else is much more efficient. That we always then, okay, we do that. And then after some time it feels it doesn't, there is not more much effect. And then, okay, we do that. Like that, we never really go through that phase where the practice seems to be not more so efficient, but actually it's also a defense mechanism of the personality that doesn't want to give up. That on one hand we are longing for freedom, on the other hand the habit of feeling, thinking, acting, reacting as a person is strong and doesn't want to give up. And something that really attacks that personality is a sustained practice. And so it's also from that part that that feeling comes that, oh, maybe it's not a good practice, maybe it's not efficient enough, maybe I should do something else. But then with that something else, when it's starting to get really deeper, then the same feeling may come back again from the personality. Oh, it's not good because somehow there is a defense mechanism of the old habit that doesn't want to let go. As I said, we are not necessarily condemned to continue the same thing on and on and on and on. But before we change, it's good to really introspect and see and feel and be honest. Where does it come from? I have read something and it has touched me so deeply, and there is such a resonance. And if I feel that, yes, and it really comes from your heart, then it's a time to make a step and change something. But if it's simply that calculating mind and thinks, oh, maybe I can get out more of it, but it's not something that naturally would come from you, then better don't go for that. Because then we can keep on changing and doing different things all the time. It's in the long run not useless, but maybe if we would stay with something longer, persistently, it would help us more to break through those barriers that the personality creates to protect itself from being absorbed into the self. There is not a right way or a wrong way to practice. And of course, established schools, often they have their very strict way of telling, first you do that, then you do that, then you do that, then you do that, and this is the right way. This is just a way. And if it corresponds to somebody, then following faithfully all those instructions, all those steps is fine. But whatever helps us to really connect with that sense of presence. And often I said, if you just say I, immediately you are touching that sense of presence. But of course, somebody who concentrates in the present is also touching that sense of presence. We can also combine it, but we can also just do one aspect and not do the other. Everybody has to find their own way. And in that sense, I said before, we have our basic approach, and then as the time passes, sometimes it changes a little. We are adapting new aspects, integrate them. Maybe we let go of old aspects that were included. That is perfectly fine. But it's not that we have to have always a doubt, am I doing the right thing or am I doing my practice wrong? And so often one can have the feeling that one is wrong if one is just looking at what the particular tradition is saying, because their tradition may put it very strictly, chuck, 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 chuck. But whatever works, whatever helps us to connect, to be in the present, to be conscious of the timelessness of the now, whatever helps us is the right way. And people are different, and we may go in a very strict traditional way, and then at a certain time become aware, okay, now it's time to loosen up the strictness of that, and I can develop my own flavor because it's easier for me and becoming more natural. So we need not be afraid of doing the right thing or the wrong thing. Sometimes when I discovered in my sadhana, discovered a new aspect and integrated that and felt, oh, it's very efficient. Then I thought, why have I not done that before? If I had done that before all the time, maybe I would be farther ahead. I would be much deeper. No. At that time, when it comes, it was right, and it helped to do just that, to more powerfully connect with that sense of presence, with that essence, with that base that is always there. We can develop that self-confidence and just have a good look and see how we are estranging from that and how we can bring the attention back on that which comes naturally and easiest. That is the best way to go about it. And then we may combine it with other aspects, and then that works perfectly well, or we may also not combine it and keep it in another simplicity. Just keep going on and on. The essence is the same, the minds are different. And as the minds are different, there are differences of ways strategies that we can use to connect with the essence. And so it is. There is nothing wrong with that. That's the beauty of it also. That each one's path, each one's story becomes something unique and beautiful. What we are looking for, what we need to do, is basically so simple. What is not simple is to confront all the barriers that come out of the subconscious, and then in spite of it popping up again and again and pulling us away all the time and again, in spite of that, to continue. That needs courage, that needs perseverance and patience. But what we need to do is basically simple. And so if we choose something and that works, then it's fine, and we should not sabotage ourselves all the time, thinking maybe I should do it a bit different or should add something or something is not wrong because basically the teaching is like this or like that. If it works, go about it. And then if a period comes where it's not so easy, then we just continue. We know it works, but somehow we may have to go through a period where there is more bubbling up from the subconscious, where there is somehow more difficult influences from the outside, whatever that is, wherever the obstacles come from. Then if we keep going, then that we are going through that again, and there we become aware, yes, it is very efficient. Once you are rooted, once you are really living from that perspective, you don't have to use the tool anymore. And yet, many Mahatmas, they still will practice their tool because it's simply one way to intensify that sense of presence, even if they are rooted, even if they are not losing it. Doing the same practice in spite of that will harness a lot of energy, which is beneficial for them, and which is also beneficial for the whole world.